Welcome. This is Boys to Men, a new show produced by Guadalupe Media. I'm your host, Eric Palacio. Today, we'll be talking about the role of the father in the family unit. And I'm going to be speaking with these two guests here. I have my uncle, Mr. Charles Ellis, and my godfather, Mr. Carlos Romero. So my first question, fathers are often known as protectors of the home. Now, I'd like to know what each of you think is the most important responsibility in this role.
Well, it's a very important question, Eric. Fathers should be the protectors of the home, and we should accept that responsibility and live up to that responsibility and role. We should be the example that we want our children to be. We should be providers, we should be leaders, both spiritually, financially, and in all aspects. And we should have a good relationship with our spouses so that we lead properly in the home.
Well, I look at it as protectors of the family, not only the spiritual part of it, but on the reality part of it, in which I know this where we men in society is feeling is actually the protectors when it comes to the economical part of it. The fending for the family, make sure that they meet their needs. And that's one of the important things that we need to look at, especially that nowadays that we see boys are coming up or sons are coming up, they need to understand this very important role, to be responsible in that way there.
Yeah, definitely interesting to know that it's not just physically, not just mentally, but in all aspects, spiritually, financially. So it's a very all-encompassing role.
And scripturally, we are called to be leaders of the home. And for years now, men have been abdicating that responsibility and not taking up that leadership role, which is the reason why we have all the ills that is happening in our society right now.
That's true. In Ephesians chapter 6, verse 4, it says that men are privileged with being able to imitate the role of the father through God. And so I just wanted to know if there are any traits that you try to emulate that stem from God, that you find it challenging to emulate.
The best, the good Lord is the best teacher that we could ever hope for. And to emulate him is next to impossible, but we have to strive to be like him. And the example that he said, we have to try our best in trying to reach at that level. It's by being a good father, being a good parent, giving good examples to your children so that they can follow. It's simple things that you have to do.
It's quite a challenge because what happened is that if we look at Jesus Christ as being the father of all the humans that we could possibly be on this earth and be a father to our kids, we also get challenged by our own kids. So it is a challenge to meet that goal or to set that level of respect and let the kids understand that your role is an important role. The thing is that the same way how people didn't take Jesus very seriously, I think sometimes our kids don't take us seriously. But then we ask the question, well, why do that happen, right? And again, like what Charles says, that we men sometimes don't take up our roles seriously. And I guess the kids see through us where we falter, and then they find that as a way of taking advantage of that situation, right?
And it's like I said earlier, we must want to be the example we want our children to be. And if our example is the Father in heaven, I mean, there's no better example than that.
That's true. Especially with how, for example, my own father, from when I'm little, doesn't matter if it's raining, if the only reason why you wouldn't be able to go to church is if you're sick, you're injured, and even then, if we're vacationing, we're gonna find a church. Even if it speaks Spanish, if they speak any other language, we're gonna go.
That's important, right?
Something as simple as that, my father setting the standard for what is to be spiritually the norm and to strive to be closer to God. That something like that is, it may be hard for him to do, to try and constantly show that example to me and my brother. But for me, at the time as a child, it just showed me that like things like this, my father is a spiritual person, and so I have to be able to follow through on that.
Yeah.
So even if it's hard at times, I feel like the kids, especially when they're younger, it's definitely something that they don't see through, you know? It's not, they don't point out your faults. They just see, Dad says we always go to church, and so.
Well, one of the important thing is that in some families, and my family used to be like that many years ago, is that sometimes we don't establish that they embedded into the family the rules and regulation that we're supposed to follow, and we set them down. So once we don't implement that in the family, you find chaos, because you do what the worldly things you need to do, and you don't really put the emphasis and rules and regulation that, okay, every Sunday we need to take this, no matter what, like you said, like your father and your family does, that responsibility to go to Mass first and have God in it as the first thing in the family. And then everything else follow through. And I think is that we realize that your father do this kind of things with you guys, and then when you become an adult and a man and you have your own family, you will follow this tradition what your father started, right? Because what happened is embedded in you. It's a part of your DNA now. So, and then you become the son where it brings a certain satisfaction and comfort from your dad, seeing that you're following his footsteps.
Yes. Right.
And then you pass on this to your kids and your siblings. And then also, the oldest kids at the family, they're like yourself, being the oldest one, have a very high responsibility for make the other one follow you. Because if you falter and take a diversion to your life, the other one follow the same way. So you might find that your father come a little bit harder on you, but it's because you yourself have a responsibility to your siblings also too.
Yes. It's true what you say, because some fathers, they leave behind money, their fortune, their estate, which is fine. But when you leave behind a way of life, ideology to follow God, that's something that can never go away. It goes throughout the generations, all the way down long after you're gone. Yeah. So, and especially, it's hard to imagine when fathers, they don't follow this role properly. Not in abandoning, but being a bad model for their children. Especially at school, my parents would always tell me, it's like, don't get mad at these kids who are mean to you, who try to bully you and mess with you, because imagine evil doesn't come from nowhere. No one is born bad. They learn it, they see it from home, and then that's what they go to school. So if they see their parents swearing and being rude to people, then that's what they're going to go and do. So like you guys said, it's very important that we follow through with that kind of
example. I can't agree with you more. Example is the biggest teacher. For me, I grew up in a home where every week, I had both parents, fortunately, and every week we attended Mass as a family. And that's what I knew, that's what I experienced. And so when I became a parent, I did the same thing. So I took, and I'm still doing that to this day. I have children as well as 24. And they're still going to church with us every Sunday. So you live what you know, and I'm hoping that what I'm doing, they will pass it on to their kids eventually.
Especially it's surprising to see how a father's actions and his habits, good and bad, can pass on to his children. It's just like my dad. He likes to joke around when we're just sitting around. He likes to tell jokes. He likes to make people smile and laugh. And even when he's not around, I find myself trying to just bring people joy in any little way. You know, so it's, just to finish off on this point, it's important that fathers, they leave behind a good legacy. They don't have to be perfect, but they need to make sure that what they do, they're comfortable with and that they believe is the right thing, so that their children can pick up on the very same thing.
Right.
Yes. I just a little bit I just want to say is that we have to keep in mind too, is that it's never too late for a father to start being a spiritual leader and being the economical support to your family. Sometimes we go off track as men, but it's never too late to make a start. And it's very hard for men when they don't know how to do it, or they just see and follow the society at large doing these things. So, but when they start to walk a different path and they start to get more into the spiritual part of it, the enlightenment of it, and they start to realize, okay, I've been not on the path that I should supposed to be, and the reality hits there, and they find that them themselves, because I experience it quite a lot, that I as a father feel even different the way how I cope with my whole family, because I'm walking a different path. So it's never too late to start that.
What do you guys think about how nowadays children, they have access to, of course, technology, phones, laptops, television, and I've heard like people say that these are basically like portals to so many different types of worlds, so many communities and groups of people, individuals online. And so how do you feel about having to be the person that has to be the line of defense between all the bad, negative things that try to influence your children, that try to get through to them and to influence them?
Well, it's a role that we must accept as parents, that we need to have control over, because if you don't, you will have the portals controlling and ruling the lives of your children. So it's very important when your children are young that you set parameters, that there are certain nights during the week when there's school time, the kids shouldn't be allowed to use the technology, because they get distracted, they won't concentrate on their school. And you have to be serious about that, because we come home from work, a tiring day from work, and the last thing you want to do is to police anymore when you're at home. You want to relax, but you have to do homework, you have to help them with meals, you have to ensure that they're doing what is necessary so that they can prepare for the school day tomorrow. And you don't want them distracted. So it's a difficult situation because of the same thing. We're tired, and sometimes we release the hold that we have on our kids, and that's when they can be led astray. But at the same time, you can't totally not let them be involved in the social media and getting the gadgets and so on. It's important because this is the new world that we're living in now. If they don't know about it and they don't know how to operate these things, then they will be left behind. But they must be taught that this thing can be used for good purposes, to do research, to do educational stuff. Of course, the fun games and so on, but not to get totally distracted that you become antisocial, you're only there chatting, and when you meet somebody, you can't even have a decent face-to-face discussion,
Yeah. Well, I see it as a necessity for kids. I'm so amazed. I've seen the intellectual part of most kids so far beyond my expectations and what I know. In fact, is that problem solving when it comes to these gadgets here. It's my son Nicholas who always they help me with certain programs, and amazing how fast kids deal with these issues. Right, that's something great to admire. But I think we have to strike a balance in it, right? And the balance, we as parents have to really realize that the physical part of it with the kids, which is the balance, I believe. Like, for example, the kids have to have some chores in the house to be done, have to have certain physical activity to be involved in, not only with the equipment. And the thing is that most of the kids, and sometimes we say, okay, we love them so much that we allow them so much free time that they could be on these gadgets. But we ask ourselves, is that really love? I don't think so. I mean, that could be really corrupting them in a way. I find that after school they come in and they have certain chores that they have to deal with, that kind of put a little time span or time to be consumed physically, which I think balance out the scale, no? Which is very important.
The important thing is to have control. As parents, we have that right. We can have control over our kids. Not abuse. I'm not talking about abusive control. I'm talking about constructive control, so that you can limit their use and reward for hard work, like Carlos mentioned. No? You reward, you give an extra time, an extra hour, maybe on the weekends or maybe, But we have to maintain that discipline in ourselves so that we can control the use of the technology that the kids can use for negativity.
Well, I think, Charlie, said something just now where actually remind me of technology. And at the moment right now in this world, it's not only the kids are being taken up with this technology. I think even parents are so much involved in it. And I think is at supper time, dinner time, or even breakfast, everybody eat and everybody have a phone in their hand. And so what happened is that's an epidemic actually happening at the family. There's nobody interacting around the table, which we're supposed to, this gift from God, we're supposed to take away food seriously and give thanks. And we talk about family thing meanwhile we eat, but then we become very selfish, right? Because it's about me and social media and nobody else in it. So your father, your mother, your sister, everybody, nobody is interacting, none at all. It's everybody in their own little gadget, and that's their world. So I think we have to start to implement some rules within the family. When we eat, no phone at all. Yeah. You know, we have to have a certain family discussion time. How was your day? How did it go? You know, you have any trouble? Can I help you with something or what's not? Trying to eliminate these gadgets to a limit that it doesn't come and interrupt the family structure.
That's an interesting topic with regulating ourselves with technology, and I want us to talk more about that after this break. So we're going to take a break and we're going to come back and we'll talk more about that. Welcome back. This is Boys to Men, and I'm here with Mr. Charles Ellis and Mr. Carlos Romero. Now, last time we were talking about the role of how you guys are supposed to be defending your children against technology, and how it's important as well for you yourselves not to let yourselves get consumed in your recreation, in your own like phones and your laptops. And so I wanted to ask you, what do you think is where the line should be drawn when it comes to allowing your devices to babysit your children sometimes? Because I've seen adults just leave their children with devices, and that acts like the babysitter, and it trains the child to go to learn things that aren't, monitored by the parents. So.
Well, the line definitely has to be drawn. Nobody should be able to raise a child other than the parents or a guardian. But to have the television or devices raise your children is a reality. It's happening a lot in today's society. It's because of what I said earlier. Parents come home from work tired and don't want to deal with the stresses of home because they've dealt with stressful situations all throughout the day. And the easiest thing to do is just to say, go on this thing, do this, do that. But in doing so, just to get a brief relaxation from a stressful day, you're endangering the future of your children. And it's up to parents to understand and realize that doesn't benefits the child. And the relaxation that you're getting now will come back to haunt you down the road when you can't control that child because of all the negativity that they can be exposed to while being babysitted by the technology. So it's the parents just have to understand that just doesn't make any sense and take control.
Well, I strongly believe is that we have to strike a balance on it. I mean, we are seeing right now that the effect of communication, PR, with most kids right now is actually really, really bad. Most of the kids will deal with so much technology during the course of the day, sometimes all day. When you really bring it out to society out here and you actually introduce it to somebody, you could actually identify a child who is exposed with good PR, and you could actually identify a child who deal with too much technology. Just by the way how they not even smile, they don't have that confidence, they don't have that self-esteem, that powerful self-esteem for shake somebody's hand with a certain strength, right? And say, well, you know what, I feel secure.
It affects their character.
That's right. So we define that down the road, like what Charles said, these things here will affect a child when they start to get out into the workforce and they have to start to deal with the public, the corporate market, and you can't confront somebody and talk about business. They want to take a certain really punishment because what happened, no exposure is there. And so we as parents have to start to break our kids out of that thing there. I mean, I try to do it at home as much as the best I can, and I have to tell my sons, when you shake an ex-man hand, no, hold it with a little finger. You grip the other person with strength and make them know here what. This grip that I come from, a confident person, and that means a lot.
And I think this essentially goes back to what this topic is all about, that we should be leaders in our home, in our homes. And once we set that leadership role and we act and we live up to that role, our kids will be all right. But they will still be challenged, but at least they will have a better foundation to face the challenges. But like Carlo mentioned in the workforce, people who are like what what he just mentioned will be unemployable. Nobody will hire them because they have no social skills. They might be technically sound, but they don't know how to interact with people.
As far as exposure to technology goes, what do you think is the age where a child should be given the responsibility to say, here, this is your tablet, this is your phone, or you have rights to use the TV now from this hour to this hour when I'm not around, things like that. When do you think is the age range when that should be allowed to take place?
I guess that depends on the parent, but for me, in my home, my children weren't able to get a telephone until they were in second form, and that was challenging on them because the peer pressure that they would be under, because from primary school, their peers have telephones, but they didn't have any need to have a telephone at that time. So I don't know if there's a set age, because there are educational things that are on the tablets that you can show to a child at a very young age. But it has to do with the control and striking the balance that Carlos has mentioned. We just can't give it to them and leave them with it for all hours of the day. That shouldn't be the case.
Well, I think when it comes to the gadgets, I think we have to consider the classification of the gadgets. To what extent these gadgets will develop your kids' mind. I guess as a child, we could still have them playing these musical things, so they could have the thing in there. Nowadays, like we mentioned earlier, some of the kids, I think, bypass these musical toys and other things which enhance them, and they go straight from, I guess, baba to phone. And the thing is that they don't want any other phone. They want one phone even better than the one you have. So what happens is that we have to be conscious of what grade of technology are we giving our kids so they could grow with it, but not getting something that's so advanced that will affect their mind and expose to everything that the media have to offer, because then I think we'll look for problems.
You're definitely right, because I've seen that there are different types of technology, things such as like a toy that you press a button and it makes noise or it spins around. That stuff is, of course, any child's got to have that. But as it goes up through the grades to where they have little game devices, which I think is okay at a little bit of a younger age to take up their time. But then it gets to the point where they are given like tablets. I've seen one of my cousins and her friends that are like, they're both like 6 and 7. And they're given free range to go on YouTube, and the next thing you know, they're watching like a show that's for adults. And I know it's for adults. I had to tell them to stop it, get off of that. I don't think you're allowed to be watching that. Obviously, they're not. So it's definitely about what type of thing they're being exposed to, especially like TV. They need to be monitored on what they're watching, how long they're allowed to watch it. And as they get older, they need to be taught discernment, so they know what, is healthy or not, so that it's not, as soon as you give them free range, they take all the time they want, It
all boils back down to control. The parents have to be in control. You can't, and then children don't value things, because the moment they cry because their friend have a phone, and you feel pressure to give them a name brand expensive phone, and then they damage it, you buy a next one for them. They don't value anything. If they can just damage it and get another one, then what's the value in this? And then you give them free rein to just roam all over the place. Parents have to handle their responsibilities.
Well, I think Charles mentioned something very, very important. I think is that we as parents sometimes we merit our kids even without them working for these things. And I think as parents, we have to set certain goals. If you meet this threshold with your education, you bring me certain grades, you will be entitled to get a gift of this capacity. But not just because, well, your son and friend have one like that, you will get one just like that. No. You have to teach them to work towards that. You earn that. If you earn that, then you could be responsible enough to handle that. Right? And this is what Charles says, that having a control. And I think that teaches the kid a certain sense of responsibility, which is to himself or herself, and also the responsibility and respect to their parents. Right? Because what happens is that when the kid there with we as parents, there is certain control. But what happens when they are not with their parents? They have to have that mentality of saying, you know what, my father, my mother told me that I can't do certain things and I have to respect that. So I think we got to let the kids earn these things. Can't be just given, just freely given.
And I think too, parents must be able to have access to the social media that their children go on. So if they have a password, you need to know what that password is. And you can't, you have some children saying you're infringing on my privacy. What privacy? You're living under my roof. So up to a certain age, you have to have that control. You have to know, and you have to actually go in there and see what they're looking at and sending and receiving.
Yes, and especially as a flip side towards, you said, Mr. Carlos, you said that they need to earn the right to technology, and I feel like through personal experience, I know we also have to be held accountable to our actions. For an example, I remember a few years ago, I had received a laptop for Christmas. And I was over the moon, ecstatic about being able to have my own laptop, play my games, and go on the internet, whatnot. And then next thing you know, February, I spill water on it, and then I hide it. I don't tell my mom or my dad until my mom asks for it.
He may just be knowing about this now.
Oh, man. No, they found out like pretty soon as they asked for it, and I left the water in the laptop because I didn't know how computers work. The point is that my mother, she didn't immediately go the next month start looking for laptops. I had to go the entire year using her laptop or using my brother's. Actually, my brother didn't have a laptop at the time, or my father's rather, to try and get by, And then I earned the right the following year, I think, to try again and get my own, and I've been able to try and keep up with that. So it's definitely important that they're being held accountable to what they own, and that when they break it, they have to feel the repercussions of their irresponsibility.
Yes.
True.
And that kind of relates into my next question, which talks about how fathers, in the Bible it says that fathers, they have to walk a fine line between doing the right thing for their children, even if it may make them upset and it's not exactly what they want, but also not angering their child for no reason and just wielding their control however they please without care for their feelings. So I want to know if you've ever had an experience related to that.
Well, you have to exercise tough love. You love your child, but at the same time, you can't let them go I don't like to use the word punish, but unreprimanded for doing wrong things. You have to sit down with them and let them know the wrong that they did. And if it warrants some sort of disciplinary action, you have to do that. You have to do that and let them know exactly what they're being disciplined for, what they did wrong. But we just can't be covering up every time our children makes a mistake, because that too will come back and haunt us eventually. But we can't, as parents, we can't discipline out of frustration, because then we might get physical and we could do serious damage to our children. I'm not saying that. I'm not getting into the argument if spanking is wrong or right or anything like that, but I grew up getting some, and I gave out a few, but there are different crimes deserve different punishment, different disciplinary actions. Yes.
Yeah, that experience there is quite a tool, because I think if I know I did receive all these punishments when I'm in the group, I won't be the type of person who I am today. Because I think I had a lot more freedom than what my kids have at this moment right now. But one thing when it comes to that fine line, Ray, is that I do understand something very, very important right now, which I didn't had with my parents. The thing is that when it comes to that sense of punishment, we got a tendency that when we are in an angry setting because or upset because of what the kids have done, we implement the punishment. And many a times is that I think we have to give a certain leverage to the kid. Okay, let's talk about this. Tell me exactly what the situation was about. You explain to me. Because most of the time we don't give the kids the opportunity to speak. And we implement things without hearing
their perspective.
Exactly. And that's important, right? Because what happens is that when a kid speaks about the issue, he himself is been evaluating himself. So he and I have to express all that he did, and he started to think about what he did. So when he comes with the punishment from a dad, no, we can be a little bit considerate. But you know what? At least we get to know our kids a little bit more, the way how he thinks, the way how he acts, so then we could correct psychologically or physically the issues that we are doing. And that way we don't anger the kid, because, you know, give him a chance to express himself. Give him that chance to develop as a person, to identify where he went wrong.
Yeah, it's true. I'm not condoning for parents to do physical violence, but I do understand what you're saying when it comes to things like spankings here and there, because I believe that it humbles people sometimes to know that they are wrong, and if they can't listen to words, then certain light, of course, a spanking here, or you pull them aside and you talk to them, could do some good for them. And I feel like we've all seen someone who could have used a little spank here and there that, and it would have done a lot of good for them growing up, especially. And I want us to talk more about that after. Yeah? Yes. Finish.
Yeah, well, it's like I said earlier, you live what you experience. I grew up in a house where I may have gotten about 4 or 5 good spanking in my life. But they were worthwhile because I deserved those, but I didn't have parents who brought out the whip for every silly thing that I did, and it's the same thing with my kids, with raising my kids. But when they do wrong, they know because we have to, as parents, we have to let them know the wrong that they're doing. We just can't just let it slide. We have to talk it over, and you have other methods than spanking. You can take away something that they cherish a lot, and they will feel that more than any spank. So,
But what you said on this topic also to Ere, I strongly believe is that the kids have to understand, don't get your parents in anger also.
Yes.
Because what happened, the kids turn these things around psychologically. So don't provoke your parents to anger, because you will feel the wrath.
That's true.
And at the same time, the scripture says parents shouldn't provoke their children to anger. So it's a double-edged sword. You have to. We are the leaders. It comes right back to that. We are the leaders, and we need to lead.
After this break, I want to get into the psychological effects that certain punishments and, of course, praise as well can affect the child as they grow up. So we're going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back. And we're back. Last time we were talking about the effects mentally on children when their parents, they discipline them too roughly, physically and mentally, in the words that they speak. So I wanted to talk to you guys about what you think is the effect of harsh and especially sometimes cruel punishments towards children. Like for example, we hear all the almost horror stories about how the children, they have to put their hand on a hot stove, or they beat them with wire or hangers, things like that. Things that are just some would say it's like inhumane, unjustifiable. What do you think are the effects on the children from that kind of punishment?
You know, that's a very interesting question. You would think that a child that grows up in an abusive setting would live contrary to that when he becomes an adult, but you live what you know. And instinctively, when you're in a situation and you become a parent, instinctively when your child do wrong, that's the same, you enact the same discipline that you grew up learning. Mm-hmm. But I had a neighbor, had about, it was a lot of them, about 8 kids or 8 or 9. And their mother, especially the father, was a fisherman, so he was often not at home. But the mother was very strict. And I used to see that mother burning their feet with firewood when they would be out longer than they should have been, giving them some serious whippings. But now, that family is a God-fearing, they are Jehovah's Witness, by the way. That family is a God-fearing family. And all of them are devout Jehovah's Witness, giving all praises to their mother for the type of upbringing that they had. So go figure. I guess that's the exception, not the rule. I don't think that works in every situation, but that's an experience that I have witnessed. But that's not how I grew up. Yeah. So that is a totally different type of discipline. I don't really advocate for that. It worked for them, but I don't think in most situations that it would be the ideal thing to do. No?
Yes. I find that pretty challenging because what happens is that I strongly believe it creates what we call baggages. As an adult, when you go through a childhood like that, dealing with these very harsh punishment, you create certain baggages as an adult, and you take this into your marriage. And then you apply these baggages even with your kids. And some people never go or have the chance to seek help to eliminate these baggages. And as could be up to 50, 60, they linger on these experiences. Right? Which it is hurtful, and I say you can't forget them, but they need help to eliminate these baggages which they experienced as a child, which is so difficult. But I guess we could always mention to ourselves, oh, that's the way I grew up. I can't change. And so that's the way I want to live my life. But it's not really so. And the thing is that if we keep our trust in God, all these things could be eliminated. All these baggages could be eliminated. You could start to forgive yourself, and then you actually forgive the person who actually did these things to you. So you can continue your life on a different level and then you realize that, you know what? My kids then got nothing to do with the way how I grew up. And you as a kid then, you don't have no control. It was your parents, right, that did these things here. And we have to be conscious that we don't repeat this cycle of events. Sometimes we talk about families that you got this family curse. And one family did this, so I want to do it, and then this continue and continue. Where will it stop? Right? So it's very important for us to come to a conscious effort to break these family curse and then say, it will stop here. My kids know and continue. What if I got through it? But I know better now, so it will not continue.
Well, that's a very important point, but it's easier said than done, especially if you grow up in an abusive relationship. You have examples where a youngster grew up seeing his father beating on his mother and vowed that he would never do anything like that when he becomes a husband. And the first quarrel that he and his girlfriend had, not even a husband yet, he picked up his hand and bop. That's what he knows. Yeah. But what Carlos mentioned about breaking the cycle is very important, because if you don't have somebody in that family setting that is able to break the cycle, that thing will just continue and continue and continue. Carlos mentioned that people need to learn to seek out for help. But therein lies the problem. Nobody knows where to look for help. Because if you're in your close-knit society and that's all you're seeing and nobody's there showing you a better and a different way to live, it's very difficult, and then you don't have any trust to go and speak to anybody. So it's up to people who know better. We can't be devout Christian living a good family life and keep that all to ourselves. We have to reach out to people who aren't living like us to let them know that there's better.
Many would say that like children like that, they're just unequipped. They don't have the tools that they need to be better. And we can all say, I want to do better. I'm not gonna treat people like how my parents treated me. But when you don't know any better, you don't know better. And you have to do what you, not have to, but you're gonna do what you know, what you grew up with.
Exactly. And those kids are placed at a disadvantage when they're in the school setting, because a lot of times children who have it better than them discriminate against them, and that's totally unfair. But that's the reality. That's the reality that we're faced with. And then these kids grow up with grudges, and when they become of age, they get involved in illicit activities, and that is where they find their power. And you know, it's difficult to change and turn them around at that stage.
Yes. You were speaking about how the Jehovah's Witness, the family,
right?
They grew up and then all of a sudden they started praising God because thanking their mother, right?
Well, they were always Jehovah's Witness.
Yes, they were.
But now that they're adults,
yeah,
all of them are big into their church and thanking their mom now.
I think a part of it's genuine, and another part is maybe a bit of a psychological effect, because I can remember watching a show where this guy whose father would beat him, he says that how he sees people trying to justify, the parents can beat their children because look at me, I turned out fine,
yes.
Things like that. And he says that how it's also good to acknowledge that, sometimes when you've been experiencing a certain type of abuse all your life, you don't want to look back and say, man, it was all a waste. So you take it and you say, look, I turned out fine. I'm not messed up. I'm not.
So the beatings weren't for nothing?
They have to be for something. But I think it's also, it's not good to try and raise people into religion like that, because, the metaphor is that, you have the donkey and you want to encourage him. You either put a carrot in front of him or you prepare a whip behind him to get him to go. And who knows if these people, they're not looking for the carrot, the metaphorical carrot that is salvation and trying to find God. Or if they're just mentally, their mind are just looking back to when they would be burned and beaten, things like that. Then that's what they're running away from. They're not running to God. They're running from something else.
That could be the case, but I don't advocate that. That is just something that I witnessed, and I think that's more the exception than the rule. I think in most cases, children who are abused like that turn out to be totally different, unproductive members of our society. So I don't think that's the right way to do it.
I think at this stage, we as a Christian community, we have to pray for these parents quite a lot, and that they may realize what they're doing wrong, right? And the thing is, it comes back again to where our society is, at the level of where our society is, that we have to take our responsibility very serious. Sometimes you find couples who not even married, and just a Kamala union. And when you look upon the kids, they're from different fathers. And then maybe the mothers are going through such a sacrifice and hardship to grow these kids that she takes out that hardship and anger on the kids, which the kids don't have nothing to be blamed for coming to this world itself. But the anger of a father or a mother, because of the situation they're in, they take it out on the kids. And the kids are totally innocent to that extent. And this is where, when we put the kids on the criminal part of it, because what happened is that that's the life they're only exposed to.
Yes, they're not used to conversation and diplomatic resolution. They're used to fighting it out, cussing it out, yelling, see who can outmight each other to try and get what they want, not worry about other people.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, I share exactly what Carlos just mentioned. And I was in a discussion with one of my children, and he was saying that, one of my older boys, he was saying that everybody has their own mind. They know right from wrong. But I had to explain to him that that is true, but at the same time, you have to thank the good Lord of the situation that you grew up in. You're very fortunate to have both parents. But I told him, imagine a youngster, maybe he is the 4th out of 5 children or the 5th out of 5 children, and his mother and all the other siblings are for different fathers. The guy that is coming along is only giving money for his child, and that person doesn't have any father figure in their lives. And all the youngster is seeing is a guy on the corner having his pants to his uncle or wherever, having a lot of money, having girls, and maybe that is the first person that shows this youngster love, giving him some money, helping him going to school and things like that. When that child reached the age of 12, 13, that same guy would come to him and said, look, I need you to do this for me. And the kid will feel obligated, feel honored to do whatever this guy is telling him to do, because this is the guy that showed him love. You know, and that is the reality some of our kids are growing up in our country. You would be shocked, Eric, if you see the situation that some of our children are growing up in the city. And that picture that I just painted is true. It happens. It's happening every day. You have children going to high school, girls who are being so loved by their parents.
Yeah.
You know, it's
a bad situation.
Yeah.
When people, they believe that, oh, I know right from wrong. And I fall into this trap sometimes myself when I think, oh, I can determine right from wrong. I'm 16. At this point, I can think for my own self and I know what's up. But it's one of the important things that my parents have tried to instill in me is not only to try and go on the right, but to also just have the discernment, be self-aware, because it doesn't matter what you like or you don't like or what you're prone to. When you're self-aware and you know what your weaknesses are, you know what you're prone to do, what you're good at, and what you can be held accountable for. It's much easier for you. You know, when I forget things, I know that I tend to, not listen to people when they're trying to correct. Things like that. You need to be aware of what your faults are so you can plan around that.
But fortunately, you have both parents, giving you those teachings.
Yes.
Imagine in a household where you have one or none.
Yes.
And the examples you're getting is, why get up to this, to that? You know, it's nothing constructive. And we have a lot of that coming up. Yeah. So the important thing is that we can't lose faith, lose hope. We have to keep on asking God for guidance, and people who have it better, who know better, have to challenge themselves and go into these societies and into these communities and try and help.
Yes.
We have to be our brother's keeper. It's difficult, but we have to do it.
Yeah. Well, let's take it a little further, Charles. The thing is that it's not only the responsibility of an adult to go into these communities and show, but the thing is that if we teach and present our kids on the right path spiritually and in positive values, that I think our kids going back to school, interacting with their own peers, even them are being like a little disciple. They're even showing an example to the same peers in the class. You know what? You don't have to act like that. You could act this way. And even the kids have a responsibility in that way. They also do, because what happens is that you don't be selfish. You have to share this love to other kids who don't have that love. That's why I like have kids over to my home, because that way if they have a setting where the kids are sharing with other kids, then I, as a parent, when I have them over, I have an opportunity to get to know that individual more. And if I could put in a little plug in there, that's a plus for me, because then I start to identify where maybe the kid need that strength, need that support, need that moral thing, or you just as a family, maybe sharing with them as a unit, as okay, well, we got father, mother, and sons, but we interact, right? And you have them included in there. It brings a different view to them, that give them hope and say, you know what, I want something like this. I want inspired to have something like this. They always say, when can we come back? So you feel the positiveness, what you're doing, and that's important. So it's not only the adults, but also young guys like you, which your parents set the example. You yourself have a responsibility to your own peers at school.
And that's a good point too, Carlo. My house is always filled with boys because I have two older boys. So it's important to interact when the opportunity presents itself with these youngsters also, because a lot of them come from single parents home too. So it's true when they see the settings that my son is living under, they see a stable home, a mother and a father who loves each other. That is something that they want to look up to. And I hear things like they're telling my son that why you have it good, you should be grateful, and things like that. And when it's mealtime and they're around, everybody has to come around the table and say grace. So some of them aren't used to that, but this is my home, so if you want to eat, you have to say grace.
So in the end, it seems to be all about networking and sharing the love that God gives to each and every one of us, so that we can, we're able to become better, networking, creating a stronger Catholic community in any way possible. And that's a good message to end on, because we're nearing the end of our show. So I'd like to thank our guests, once again, Mr. Carlos Romero and Mr. Charles Ellis, for sharing with us and inspiring us on your own personal experiences. It's been great hearing from you. And is there anything else you'd like to leave to the young men that are watching this show?
Well, we are all about hope and not to give up. The challenge is more than to young men. It's to fathers that and that can be all young, that we have to man up to our responsibility as a father, as a parent. We can't be satisfied in bringing a child in this life and not living up to responsibility and maintaining and ensuring that child knows what it is like to be raised by somebody that cares for them. So we can't be boastful that we have 4 or 5 children and we're not minding any, because that's often a topic of conversation in some circles. That's not very productive. That's not conducive to the type of lifestyle that we want to live. So for us to effect positive change, we have to accept our responsibility as men and handle our responsibility, be the fathers that we are called to be the leaders that we are called to be. And if we do that, Belize will be a much better place for us to live in.
Thank you.
Well, I want to leave with a little advice to all these young men out here. The thing is that at this tender age, you young men have a responsibility to oneself. And there's a lot of hope that it can be done. The thing is that sometimes we have to take these negative things that we are experiencing, or people telling you about them, or actually demanding that you to do. Take these things as fuel and make a positive move to it with it, and say, you know what, I don't want to live this kind of lifestyle. I will take this, what you told me that I can't do this and I have to do this and what's that. Take that as fuel and prove them wrong, that you could make that change in your life, right? And it could be with your spirituality, it could be with your education, it could be economically. and for you to be a better man, right? So I always use these things as fuel for my own self to give me that strength to be a better person. So don't give up, take these challenges, take them head on, and be positive, and you could achieve everything in life and be the difference as a person in this world.
Once again, thank you guys for being here with me and speaking with me and sharing your experiences with our viewers. It's been great being able to learn from you guys. This has been From Boys to Men, a Guadalupe Media show. I'm your host, Eric Palacio. Until next time.